On the 24th of July 2019, former London Mayor and Conservative Party troublemaker Boris Johnson paid Elizabeth II a visit for his first private audience as the new Prime Minister. During her 67-year reign, this was the 14th Prime Minister the Queen had received, and nothing had changed, with bowing and scraping from one side and diplomatic smiles from the other, as usual.
Elizabeth II has always kept her distance from government leaders. She has never become friends with any of them. She belongs to a world which has no use for politicians. As far as she is concerned, they are birds of a feather, whether left-wing or right-wing. She puts up with them, safe in the knowledge that such is the life of politics, that they will come and go, whereas she will always be there.
Prime Minister Boris Johnson does not govern by consensus and compromise. He has a rough and ready approach to achieving his goal, which is to leave the European Union as soon as possible. He plans to get the country out of the stalemate it has been stuck in for the past 3 years. The day after his audience with the Queen, in his first speech to the British Parliament, Bojo goes in, all guns blazing.
Our mission is to restore trust in our democracy and fulfil the repeated promises of Parliament to the people by coming out of the European Union and doing so on October the 31st.
Confronted by a hostile Parliament, Boris Johnson simply bulldozes his way through.
The great Brexit divide that started off as Leave versus Remain is finally coming down tonight to government versus Parliament, with the people and the Queen caught somewhere in the middle. To cheers from his supporters and howls of outrage from opponents, the Prime Minister announced this morning that he was suspending Parliament for longer than usual.
In the hours following the announcement of the suspension of Parliament, thousands of anti-Brexit demonstrators converge on central London. They accuse Boris Johnson of having taken the Queen hostage in a hostile takeover. Indeed, it was Elizabeth II who signed the decree, which is both her prerogative and her duty.
Boris Johnson said, "I want to prorogue Parliament. I wish you to just sign the document of prorogation," and the Queen signed it. Constitutionally, the Queen is guided and advised by her Prime Minister and her ministers. Now, if her ministers say it is okay, she has to accept that. That is our constitution.
The Queen never feels manipulated by politicians. They all try to manipulate her, but she doesn't let herself be manipulated. If she had said to Johnson, "Listen, this decree is intolerable," Johnson might have amended it. But she clearly didn't do that.
While there was turmoil on the streets of London, and the political classes were debating her role, active or otherwise, in this unprecedented suspension of Parliament, the Queen took a trip 400 miles north to her holiday home in Scotland, Balmoral Castle. On the agenda were bagpipes and the stroking of ponies. But behind Her Majesty's silence, some people detected a deeply held conviction. What if, in her heart of hearts, Elizabeth II was actually a Brexiteer?
She is a country girl at heart, who is secretly suspicious of the pro-European stance of the metropolitan elite. After all, she is head of the Commonwealth, her extended family overseas. In her eyes, the destiny of the United Kingdom lies more with those former colonies and ex-dominions than with the European Union. For all that, The Queen seems to me to be pro-Brexit, although she has never actually said so.
I would never guess what the Queen is thinking, whether she's pro or anti-Brexit. Nobody will really know what her thoughts are about it, because she will not talk about it for fear of it getting out. And getting out then causes a constitutional crisis, and she's not in the business of creating constitutional crisis.
But despite Elizabeth II wanting to avoid it at all costs, the constitutional crisis was a reality. And in London, some of the demonstrators also thought the Queen knew exactly what she was doing when she signed the decree muzzling the anti-Brexit Parliament. In mid-September, the Supreme Court, the country's highest judicial body, settled this toxic debate.
The decision to advise Her Majesty to prorogue Parliament was unlawful because it had the effect of frustrating or preventing the ability of Parliament to carry out its constitutional functions without reasonable justification.
Prime Minister Boris Johnson had broken the law by asking for the suspension of Parliament. It was unprecedented in the modern history of the United Kingdom. The ball was in the Queen's court, and it was against her religion to intervene in politics.
She may have been put in a position where she had to choose an alternative prime minister, or the leader of the opposition would have said, you have to appoint a different government or sack that prime minister. And that would have been the worst case scenario for her. She wouldn't have wanted to get involved.
3 weeks later, at the Palace of Westminster, the Queen's speech was ceremoniously delivered. Elizabeth II had not changed Prime Minister. Boris Johnson's head did not roll. Every year, in accordance with royal protocol, the monarch, dressed in all her finery, opens the parliamentary session, reading out her Prime Minister's programme to some 650 MPs and peers.
My Lords and members of the House of Commons, my government's priority has always been to secure the United Kingdom's departure from the European Union on the 31st of October.
On that day last year, Elizabeth II looked to be having a particularly bad day, her brows knitted in a frown and a grumpy expression on her face. The Queen seemed to be weary of all the conflict and intrigue that were inherent to her role, not to mention the unpopularity that went along with that.